Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic? Let's do it. What's one of the creepiest or eeriest experiences you've ever had in your life? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was maybe 10, it looked like somebody was shining a flashlight on our hall closet door. I sprinted down the hall, determined to stop my brother's attempt to scare me. Not in the bathroom or either bedroom down the hall. I figured he had snuck out of one room while I was in the other. Being the oldest, I got first pick of bedrooms when we moved. My room was the only bedroom in the basement, away from everybody else. 1970s fire truck. The red stag carpet covered the floor and extended up 3 of the walls. As an avid fan of the Chicago Bulls, I found everything in red to be quite appealing. One night I noticed a light glowing from under my bed. I better investigate. I looked under my bed, and there was just this floating orb glowing there. Nope. Ran upstairs and slept on the couch, effing horrified. The next day I lied to my dad and told him I was over the whole basketball phase and wanted to switch rooms. My youngest brother, Alex, traded with me. Fast forward 16 years. Alex is visiting my place back from a stint abroad. We're getting drunk on a Tuesday night, reminiscing about our challenging childhood. That town sucked. Alex, well, that place was haunted as shit. He tells me about the same flashlight incident happening to him. I joke that our middle brother has definitely gotten the better of us both. He calls bullshit and goes on to explain that he regretted trading rooms with me because immediately after he would see this glow coming out from under the basement bed 2 or 3 times. The last time he felt brave enough to investigate. He also claimed to have seen the orb. He described it as more soggy looking than I remember, but still. Drunken nope. I came clean about why I really wanted to switch rooms. We both fell short. We engaged in an unnecessary beer run and simply shifted the topic. I had always attributed my memory of that experience to some of the traumatic stuff going on at that time, but my brother was unprovokedly telling me about the same 2 unexplained events in almost every detail. Yeah, I'm still figuring that one out. I bought a second-hand hand-carved cedar First Nations flute a few years ago. I was traveling around the Gulf Islands on the coast of BC and brought the flute along with me. I had only brought it a week or 2 prior, so I was still learning the different notes and how to properly play the instrument. The host of the farm I was staying at had a friend over who was skilled in playing a variety of instruments, so I asked him to give it a go and see what he thought. It was around 1 or 2 in the morning at the time, and we were sitting in the living room of an old cabin surrounded by forest, with other cabins scattered throughout the forest, but far enough away that the night was silent. When I passed the flute to the musician, he took a few moments to admire the details in the carving and asked where I got it. After I told him, he began to try a few notes out. After about a minute of playing, he stopped and reviewed it again. When he put it to his lips again, he played 2 different notes, long and clear. He paused after playing the notes, and the room was filled with silence again. From what sounded like the distant forest, all 3 of us heard the exact same 2 notes repeated in length and tone. We all looked at each other in silence, acknowledging what was happening. He put the flute to his lips again and played a single note, but higher pitched. After pausing for a moment, we heard the note repeated again. This happened once more with 2 different notes, and at that time the host was pacing the kitchen. He noticed the notes were somehow coming from the dishwasher in a frequency that sounded alien to the machine's usual sounds. An odd and anticlimactic ending, but all 3 of us agreed afterwards that it was more than a coincidence. Still can't think of a logical explanation and don't see the need for one. I've lived in houses growing up that were blatantly haunted and have had quite a few terrifying experiences that cemented my belief in the supernatural over time. The house that this story took place in was built in the early 1900s and is known in the community for having a spiritual presence. Also, all three of us were sober that night. Not super eerie, but my dad said when his granddad passed away, his grandmother took butterflies as a message from him that life goes on. I wish I knew more about why, but I don't. Anyway, on Father's Day a year or two ago, my family was out hiking. I had seen a few butterflies at this park before, but they were neither abundant nor remarkable. Anyway, a bright blue butterfly lands on my dad's hand and hangs around for about 5 seconds before flying off. I was never so sure about spirits or anything like that, and I'm still not, but I can't convince myself that was a coincidence, as much as I know it probably was. I was home alone, probably reading or browsing in my room, occasionally heading to the kitchen for sustenance. I noticed the stove was on. I hadn't cooked anything, but one of my roommates might have the night before they left, though I had been in the kitchen after they left, so I turned it off. Next time I go to the kitchen, it's on. I think, and turn it off, pushing the button thingy in. Of course, next time, already low-key freaked out, I check somewhat on purpose, and it's on. I still remember the huge relief when she got home, and I didn't have to feel home alone with a ghost at best anymore. It didn't happen again, but it had me creeped out for days. Bonus round, but I just conveniently explained that with telepathy, though I am not otherwise leaning toward the scientifically unexplained. One time, when I got home very late, I realized I had forgotten my keys, and as I walked along the street, I kept thinking of my roommate, Jerry, hopefully still being awake, playing computer games, and how I would open the gate and knock on his door or his window. Just as I walked up to the gate, even though it was the dead of night, the door opened. Jerry peeked out and was a bit confused, and explained he'd heard knocking and his name called. Also, I once went on the tram and suddenly got really anxious, worrying something might crash the train. It turns out that happened to the train after us. When I was younger at my parents' home, we had a large, very large entertainment unit. For those who don't know what that is, it's a wooden unit with a series of shelves. On the top shelf, we had a broken clock. We had a stereo, which was a glorified record player and record albums. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor and going slowly through the albums, deciding what song I wanted to listen to, when suddenly became aware of a noise. I stopped for a moment to listen, and it sounded like somebody pushing a heavy cardboard box across a bare floor. I was home alone. In the next second I realized the sound was coming from above me. I looked up and saw the broken clock sliding slowly off the shelf. I yelled no, and put my arms up. This is the creepy part. It slid off the shelf, arced upward, and landed in a chair 2 feet behind me. I got up and backed out of the room and decided to go upstairs to my room. As I'm climbing the stairs, suddenly both water faucets turned on full blast. I ran back down the stairs, sat outside, and waited for someone else to get home. I watched Paranormal Activity 2 with a bunch of friends in the theater back when I was in high school. I'm deathly afraid of scary movies, even the corny ones, because I overanalyze things and always end up correlating events that probably have nothing to do with each other. That being said, this was eerily coincidental. In this movie, a demon drags the family dog around a corner, if my memory serves me correctly. That part scared me more than any jump scares because I love dogs and have 2 German shepherds at home. Anyway, it was a terrible movie, in my opinion, so we all made fun of it, partially to convince each other we weren't scared. At the end, we all bid farewell and went our separate ways. So both of my dogs sleep with me in a bed that is flush up against the wall, maybe 1 inch tops in between the mattress and the wall. Anyways, that night I finally get to sleep and begin dreaming that my dogs are being attacked inside my bedroom. And in the dream, I can hear them yelping and crying but can't help them. I suddenly jolt awake with one of those big inhale realizations that it was just a dream. The room is pitch black this entire time. I begin to regain my composure when I discover that one of my large shepherds is absent. The other one is sound asleep next to me. This is the spooky part. I start to hear whining, and it takes me a bit to figure out where it's coming from. It's coming from under my fucking bed. I start to feel around, still unsure of what the hell is going on, when I feel my missing pup's paw pointing straight up in the crack between my wall and bed. The same crack that is less than an inch on a normal night. At this point, I'm just looking angry and absolutely sure something is dragging my dog under my bed. I jump up and literally throw my mattress onto the floor. Solomon, the missing pup, immediately springs up through the bed frame and sprints to his kennel downstairs. I told my parents, and their response was, "Oh, I'm sure he just fell down there." But how does a slipping dog move an entire queen bed on carpet enough to fit in the entire adult doggy body down there? It's also hard to explain why he wouldn't go in my room for a few days. My brother had horrible night terrors when he was a kid. He's 3 years older than me, and growing up we did not get along in the slightest, hated one another. Anyway, we shared a room at my dad's house, and his bed was directly in front of a large open closet. Mine was against the wall opposite to the closet. I woke up to him fussing in his sleep, which was always terrifying because it was really scary to be abruptly woken by someone who having a horrible night terror. He was talking but not quite screaming yet. In the closet, I was staring at a dark figure that was about 6 feet tall, outlined like a person but with no distinguishable features. It just seemed to be hovering around my brother. My body wouldn't budge. With the exception of my eyelids nearly shutting, my brother slowly sat up in his bed, walked over to mine, and tried to lie down on my twin bed. In his sleep, he pushed me onto the floor and crawled onto my bed. I ran to the light switch, right next to the closet, and flipped it on. He woke up extremely confused and went back to his bed. As an adult, I have sporadic episodes of sleep paralysis, and I pretty much convinced myself that's what I saw. The rest was just weirdly coincidental. I was out walking one evening about 8 p.m. January UK, so it's dark and freezing with my mom. The route we take is a country road between two villages. No animals are nearby, just empty fields. It's completely quiet as usual when suddenly a horse whinnies in my ear, full-on horse noise, right next to my head. I've got my hoods up so my vision to my sides is slightly restricted, but I'm turned my head expecting to see a horse that had somehow snuck up behind us on an empty road. Nothing. I know I didn't hallucinate it because my mom heard it too. It was a clear night, so there were nowhere any nearby horses, and even if there had been, the noise was literally next to my head. Still had no idea what the hell it was. I tried to investigate with the torch, but my mom ran off in fear. LOL. When I was younger, my family went camping at a resort my mom's family had formerly owned. It's on a tiny island between Vancouver Island and mainland BC. One night I was relaxing on a lounge chair, staring at the sky, watching shooting stars and such, when I noticed a light that was moving extremely fast along the night sky and making instant turns. No pausing, moving fast in one direction, then all of a sudden moving fast in a different direction, sometimes turning 90 degrees or more. I watched it for a while, then it just disappeared like the lights just turned off. I have no idea what it was, but I can't think of anything that could move in such a way. This was 20 years ago. 9 years ago, by weird happenstance, my aunt met a guy online that just happened to be running the exact resort. Long story short, they get together, and she has been helping him run it ever since. Last year, they held a big family reunion that my girlfriend and I went to, In the evening, a little drunk, I started telling some cousins I hadn't met before about the experience. All of a sudden, a guy sitting at a picnic table stands up and asks me how long ago this happened. I told him it was probably 20 years ago. I would have been around 15. He asked a few more questions, and we worked out the year and what month it would have been, as I was on summer vacation. He said he was on a nearby island that night and saw the same thing. A bunch of people had and talked about it the next morning. No one knew what it was, but everyone agreed there was nothing they could think of that might move like that. So I'm about 17 or 18 and on my way to my friend's house where I regularly hung out. When I got to his place, I got out of my car and noticed there was a storm blowing in. Blustery flashes of lightning. I decided to get inside quickly. My buddy was with his girlfriend and a couple of her friends whom I didn't know. The girlfriend and her friend were taking shots of UV blue and became increasingly annoying by the second. I decided to leave. I was there for no more than 20 minutes. Leaving, I stopped at the covered porch to light a cigarette. I noticed that the air is completely still with no sign of a storm. A complete 180 from 20 minutes ago. Stepping off the porch, looking at the ground and walking toward my car, I hear a loud rustling. My car was parked beneath a tree, and I saw that a large branch directly over my car was violently shaking up and down, shaking like something was trying to rip it off the tree. I walked slowly, feeling very weirded out, looking at the branch, trying to figure out what the hell was in the tree making all the noise. I thought to myself, no animal except maybe a leopard could make that big branch move like that. I lived in Missouri, no leopards here. I reached for my door handle while looking at the branch shake, and as soon as I touched my car door, I see the faintest blue light shoot up out of the tree, making the quietest thooping noise, like the sound of a firework going off before it explodes, but very quiet. I yelled, "Oh fuck," and darted for the front door of my friend's house. I thought lightning was about to hit my car or something. I don't know. I get inside, sweaty and shaking, and tell my friend and everyone else what happened. Of course, they laugh and think I'm crazy. I returned home and told my dad and sister the same story, receiving the same response. Fast forward 8 years, still have no idea what that was. I don't like recalling the story to friends because I think it makes me sound crazy. Wish I knew what that was. We moved to a new house, a new town, and a new piece of land. About 2 weeks into settling in, our dog goes missing. She's an old lab, and neighbors warned us about dog nappers in the area, so we didn't take chances. My dad goes looking toward the square, my mom stays at the house, and I go into the forest that's on the property. It's about sundown, so I could only make out the shapes of the trees and anything around me. After about 5 minutes of walking, I hear the familiar sound of her dog collar jingle. I call for her and see her silhouette come rushing toward me, alarmingly fast. I keep calling her, and once she was close, I figured she must be either excited or something spooked her in the woods. At the time I figured it must be hogs, since those were common. Not taking any chances in a new place, I break into a run back to the gate that separated our backyard of the forest. I'm only a few feet ahead of her, and the back patio of our house comes into view, and I was already planning on immediately shutting the gate once we got through. Then I saw her at the patio. My dad already found our dog. She was at the town square the whole time. Without a second thought, I jumped over the gate and continued running. Whatever it was that I thought was our dog came to a halt against the fence. I didn't look back and just kept running until I got to the patio. When I looked back, there was nothing there. When I explained this to my dad, he said, it was probably just some hogs, but I know I heard that jingling sound that comes from dog tags, and the creature looked exactly like my dog. To top it off, never saw that again. But we did have some animals disappear if they were left out past sundown. My roommate told me the other day that she woke up to a lady standing at the end of her bed. She knew my mom passed, but had never seen a photo of her. She went into details of what the woman looked like and was wearing, which I believe had been what my mom was wearing when she passed. She thought it was sleep paralysis, but she said she was able to move. What she didn't know was that the anniversary of my mother's death was this week. I had just moved into this place, and weird things always happen when I move in with someone new. So, yeah, my dead mother decided to check in on me and freak the out of my roommate. At least all the doors in the kitchen and broken glass on the floor didn't happen this time. Another time, a few months after my uncle passed away, I stole my dad's alcohol while he was away for the weekend. I'd only had one drink, which was a Guinness. That was my uncle's favorite drink. I only got halfway through it while sitting home alone. I got up to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, the bottle was empty with no sign of someone dumping it. Another time, a year after my mom passed and I was living in the home she passed in alone, I would wake up to the kitchen cabinet doors open. She had a bad habit of sleep eating when she was alive. A lot of other freaky things have happened to me, and I blame them all on my loved ones who died. I have even freakier stories up my sleeve. Whenever I read these stories, which is just about every single day, I always try to put myself in the answer to the question. I say, well, what's my experience with this particular topic? And I never really have a good one. Once in a while I do. And I was trying to think of something for me. The only thing I remember when I was like 16 or 17, I was walking home from my friend Paul's house, and we might have imbibed some herbal things, and it was midnight-ish, not crazy late, and I lived on a dead-end street, totally normal, walked it 1,000 times before, but for whatever reason that particular night, I was super creeped out, like I was absolutely being watched. And I remember I ran home and I ran up my stairs to my bed. It was probably just being high, but I don't know. Maybe. My grandfather was halfway done building our family cottage back in the day when my mom was very young. Tragically, he was killed by a drunk driver one day, and the cottage was never completed. He was killed long before I was born or even an idea. Eventually, a local church assisted my family and completed construction of the cottage after his death. A very modest structure, but on a prime piece of land by Lake Huron, Canada. As a kid, we would go to a cottage all the time in the summer. It was essentially a cabin with antennas used to get one channel, CBC, a fireplace, a basic kitchen, a septic tank, etc. Lake water came through the shower. It was modest but fun. When I was around 12, a lot of my family was visiting, maybe 8 to 10 people, which is pretty much all of us. I hate snoring, and the adults had been drinking. There were only 3 single beds and a few couches, and I was given a couch to sleep on. I could not handle all the snoring, so I got the keys to my uncle's green safari van and went to sleep in it. The back seats were taken out, and I was a small kid, so there was plenty of room. The memory is clear to this day, and I'm 29 now. I saw a white figure walk by the van. The figure was a young man. Everyone was sleeping and knew where I had gone. The figure was completely white, like a ghost. It was not natural. And it was clearly a person. It leaned up and looked into the van through one of the side windows. When this happened, the radio in the van turned on, producing white static. The figure smiled, and when I saw it and the radio turned on, I put my head under the blankets I had and closed my eyes, but strangely never felt overly scared or in danger. Eventually the radio turned off, and everything was normal and still again. It all maybe lasted 1 minute. To this day I think about it and have no idea what happened. But it was not a prank, and definitely something else. A few years ago, I was renting an old apartment that was built in the 1920s. A few months after moving in, the smoke detector started going off in the middle of the night. I looked and sniffed around the whole apartment and didn't see or smell any smoke. So I reset the alarm and forgot about it, until a few weeks later, when the smoke detector in another room went off in the middle of the night. Again, no signs of smoke. After the alarm went off in the middle of the night, again, several weeks later, I had my landlord replace the smoke detectors. My parents stayed with me for a weekend visit, and after my dad had already gone to bed, I warned my mom this had been happening. Just a few minutes after telling her about it, the alarm went off. I took the alarm down and put it in a sealed Ziploc bag, thinking if there was something in the air, this would prevent it from happening again. The same alarm went off again, and the same night while it was in the bag. The random alarms in the middle of the night continued happening every couple of months the entire time I lived there. There were a few other strange incidents, but it was the alarms in the middle of the night that were the most startling and baffling. I've explained multiple unexplainable mysteries. I'm going to talk about the relatively less spooky one. I went to a very well-known university with an extensive history. It started in the 1800s with one building, and they kept adding buildings for each department. My department building was one of the older ones, but newly renovated with an elevator, etc. As a student, I had a lot of assignments to finish, and I preferred finishing my work on campus. One evening, I stayed back with a friend to finish our group assignment, which was due the next morning. It was past 12 by the time we got done, and the whole department was empty. I had to quickly go from the ground floor to the third floor to grab my coat before leaving, as we were getting late for our last bus home. So I started walking toward the elevator, and my friend was following me, trying to catch up with me. I'm about 50 meters from the elevator, staring at it directly. A girl holding a black bag with an all-black gown and hat gets to the elevator before me and hits the button. The elevator immediately opens up and she enters it. As the door begins to shut, I run up and put my hand in to open the door. The door opens and I enter the elevator to find it empty. I turn to my friend and ask him if he saw the girl enter, and he looks at me confused and says, "What girl?" "I saw a man enter. Where is he?" My buddy and I were having a smoke in front of my house at 1 a.m., Suburban, Missouri. We were chatting normally as fellow humans do when all of a sudden we started hearing some dogs barking in the neighborhood, loud enough that we kind of trail off the conversation listening. Then the barking picked up, louder and more dogs it seemed like. The conversation came to a dead halt as we both realized this wasn't normal. Suddenly a terrible noise started to crescendo what seemed like a block away. It sounded like a sustained car crash, metal grinding awfulness, and then lights. Swirling lights reflecting off the back of homes a block up. This whole experience happened within about 20 to 30 seconds and then nothing. The lights and sounds immediately went away, and the dog stopped barking almost on cue. My buddy and I turned to look at each other, wide-eyed and pale. Turned back to look at where the lights were coming from and saw two glowing cat eyes staring back at us. My friend noped out, and I went inside my house and didn't sleep that night. That was 7 years ago, and I think about it daily. It's really not much, and it doesn't sound crazy or super mysterious, but it happened about 6 years ago, and I still think about it every now and again, and how scared I was. I used to have my room in the attic of my parents' house, meaning I could hear all the odd plane and helicopter, rain on the roof, etc. I'd never ever been woken up by one though. One night I woke up to the loudest helicopter sound above my head. At first I thought it was exactly that, just a helicopter. It was so loud I could feel the roof and the floor vibrating, but what felt like 2 minutes went by of me listening to it, waiting for the sound to go away so I could go back to sleep, but the sound didn't fade away. My heart started pounding out of nowhere, and I was beginning to feel really unnerved. I spent another minute listening, and it still hadn't moved away from over my house, so I got out of bed and went to the window that overlooked the street and kept listening until I could finally see up in the sky 2 sets of 3 lights in a triangular formation. One set of lights kind of disappeared gradually, but the other one I stared at for a while. It felt like we were having a staring contest, I don't know. Super weird. Although I definitely don't believe we're alone in the universe. I'm not an X-Files alien believer. I feel like I'm a rational human with a healthy amount of skepticism. but that night still makes me uncomfortable whenever I think about it. This actually happened just a few days ago, and it isn't that terrifying, but still. I was down at a shopping center with my friends, the designated hangout for people from my school, when I saw a guy who looked familiar, so familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. He was really old, yet looked really nice, but sad at the same time, and I just randomly felt this connective feeling toward him. Whatever, I just ignored it. Then he approached me and my friends, and as you know, alarm bells go off, like they do every time an elderly male approached 13-year-old girls, except he doesn't do anything weird, and instead just says to me in a really sad voice, "Remember me from a long time ago? Maybe a life?" And I just kind of shook my head. He then said, "I thought so. It was nice seeing you," and left. Normally I would disregard it as just a strange person, but I swear to God, this guy seemed so familiar, yet I had never met him. I can only describe the feeling as imagining seeing your absolute favorite person, but then only having the feelings of my absolute favorite person and not the memories of my absolute favorite person.